Chrissy's Books. I am Chrissy. Thank you for tuning in this week, and hit that subscribe button if you like my book reviews, because I definitely always keep it real. So let's jump right into this week's book. So for this week, I read Remembered by Yvonne Battle Felton. So I have wanted to read this book for a while now, and my amazing friend Nicole Barbosa sent me this book all the way from UK, England. Thank you so much, Nicole. So Nicole is a fellow bibliophile, and she has a really great podcast where she interviews basically everyone from the publishing world, and she actually interviews Yvonne Battle Felton herself on this book. I will link that below. So thank you so much, Nicole, for this great book. Let's jump right into the synopsis for Remembered. So the setting is 1910 and Philadelphia is burning. There are citywide riots and thousands of workers strike in solidarity against the Philadelphia Transit Company. Edward is in a hospital in a coma fighting for his life. The rumors are that Edward drove a trolley car right into a shop window. Some people think it was an accident, and others think that he did this on purpose. The police hover nearby and are convinced that it was for a deeper reason. Questions arise such as, did he do it? Can they find out the truth? Were his actions intentional? And will he make it out of this coma to face the consequences of his actions? For spring, the last place she wants to be is hanging around a beat-down colored section of the hospital, surrounded by sickly people and the ghost of her dead sister. But her son Edward lays in a coma dying, and she has no choice but to be there for him. The only thing that Spring is sure of is that she must hurry and tell Edward about how he came to be. With the help of her dead sister, some newspaper clippings, and her reconstructed memories, she has to try and find a way to get through to Edward before it's too late. Spring will face everything she has silenced in her past and will try her best to bring him home. So that is the synopsis for Remembered. Stay tuned, and when I come back, I'm going to give you my review and I'm going to give you my rating for Remembered. Welcome back. Thank you for staying tuned. So let's jump right into my review for Remembered by Yvonne Battle Felton. I would actually like to explain a little bit more about the story. So Remembered is a historical fiction read, and it's based in two different timelines and generations. The first is 1910 in Philadelphia, and it takes place in a time span of 24 hours, where Black people have been emancipated from slavery. The second time span is set between 1843 and 1867 and spans 24 years. It is during the time of the American Civil War, during slavery, and also when the Emancipation Proclamation took place. We follow Spring, an emancipated slave, from a young age when she lived in a plantation to the present day in Philadelphia. So the bulk of this book was actually based in the latter dates, which I was actually quite surprised about, because when I sort of read the blurb of the book, I just expected it to be in 1910, which is sort of when the emancipation had happened and the slaves are free. So yeah, a bulk of the book was actually mostly based in this 24-year time period in 1843 to 1867. We don't know a whole lot about Edward, but instead we learn much more about Spring and her dead sister, as well as the story of how Edward came to be, his history. So let me talk about what I did like about this book, what I did love about this book. So there's no denying that the story lacked any heart or rich and warm characters, because that is simply what caught my attention right from the beginning till the very end. I absolutely loved the two sisters in this book, and they are complete polar opposites, one being really feisty and then the other one being super endearing and sweet. And also loved the hearty and strong relationship that the two sisters had in this book. And also I appreciated the critical views that Yvonne Battle Felton presented on the challenges of motherhood. The amount of hardship that the two sisters go through is absolutely heartbreaking, and some of the scenes in this book are frankly quite brutal and difficult to read, but it was something that was necessary in this timeline that the book was based in. At times, I found myself struggling with the writing style of this book. And then at other times, I found myself completely enthralled and I could not stop reading this book, mostly because I was so invested in these sisters' lives. You can tell that I'm a bit like at odds with what I felt about it. I did love that the story explored the untold stories of emancipated slaves and what exactly happens to them after they are free, because this is something we seldom think about, or we rarely hear about it. And I just love that Remember it touched on this delicate and very complex experience. The only slightly negative, and I wouldn't even say that it's a negative, but it's very slightly negative comment that I had with Remembered is that it did take me a while to sort of grasp the core story of this book. I struggled to get into the bones of the plot. It wasn't until I got to about halfway point of the book that I actually started to truly immerse myself into the story and into the characters and the wave of emotions that hit you when you read this novel. So I would say that the point where the emancipation of slavery actually begins is when this book truly shines for me. And I also did feel that I really wish that the book was a little bit longer, and it felt quite rushed to me in the end. And I really craved to learn much more about Edward, as well as to have read more about that time period in 1910. Remembered felt quite relevant to our time period, even though it was based from a time long gone. Not a lot has changed in the core system of these issues. Right, so let's get into my rating for Remembered. So I gave Remembered by Yvonne Battle Felton a rating of 8 out of 10. Yes, I really loved this book. So this book, 8 out of 10 for me, means that it was an excellent read. It's a solid book. The story has substance, and it was also quite enjoyable, and I would definitely recommend you to read this book. And if I could describe Remembered into 4 words, they would be rich, because this book is just soulful. It's just like warm. It just has a lot of charm. I just really loved the sort of warmness of this book. It's very complex. A lot does happen in this book, and the story sort of weaves in and out of 2 different time periods. Yeah, it's just quite a complicated story, but not too complicated. It's just nice, complex in a good way. And then it's very vital, because this book is very much in tune with everything that's happening right now, even though it's based in 1910 and 1843 time period. Things that happen to Edward are basically the things that are happening to young Black men right now. So yeah, it is very relevant, and it's vital. It's a vital read. And then the last word would be emotional, because you are definitely riding this roller coaster wave of emotions when you read this book. Definitely gets all up in there, all in your soul, in your gut. And it's just, yeah, it's an emotional read. It's not an easy book to read, but it's a very enlightening book. So yeah, those are my 4 words to describe Remembered. Yvonne Battle Felton is definitely a gifted storyteller. This book is about close communities. It's about motherhood and the measures that mothers will go through to protect their children. It shows the complex mentality that developed during the course of slavery. It definitely wasn't an easy book to read, but you are left feeling a sense of appreciation and enlightenment after you read this book, and it will remain in your brain long after you've read it. It really will. So, I mean, it's called Remembered, so. Right, so let's get into my song pick for Remembered. I am a music lover, and I love pairing songs with books that I read. For this book, I wanted to pick a song that expressed hope, that expressed endurance, that the women of this book had gone through in order for their children to be born free and not to be born slaves. And you will know what I mean when you read this book. I just wanted a really powerful song. So for this book, I chose a song called "Oh Freedom" by the Golden Gospel Singers. This is a really beautiful song. It's intense. yeah, it's just an epic song, and it totally has everything to do with this book. So with that said, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to this week's book, and feel free to check out my full written review as well. You know, I talk a little bit more in there. I will link that below. Thank you so much, and have a great week.